The European Union's top diplomat on Friday slammed actions by the United States to sanction European companies working on Russian oil pipelines. I am deeply concerned at the growing use of sanctions, or the threat of sanctions, by the United States against European companies and interests, Josep Borrell, the EU's foreign policy chief, said in a statement. Borrell was reacting to new guidance issued by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Wednesday that said European companies known to be working on two Russian energy projects run the risk of coming under U.S. sanctions. As a matter of principle, the European Union opposes the use of sanctions by third countries on European companies carrying out legitimate business, Borrell said. Moreover, it considers the extraterritorial application of sanctions to be contrary to international law. European policy should be determined here in Europe, not by third countries. Borrell urged the U.S. to remove the threat of sanctions to allow for an open dialogue. Where policy differences exist, the European Union is always open to dialogue, but this cannot take place against the threat of sanctions, Borrell said. The U.S. sanctions target Russia's oil pipeline projects into Europe, Nord Stream 2, and a second line called Turk Stream 2. These sound like video games. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline would run from Russia to Europe through the Baltic Sea. Turk Stream 2 is Russia's project to run an oil pipeline through Europe to Turkey. The U.S. has spoken out against Russia's attempt to enter the European oil market as a ploy to hold Europe hostage and isolate Ukraine from the international market. Pompeo on Wednesday said the updated sanctions guidance under the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, aka CAATSA, is a warning to companies to get out now or risk the consequences. So I agree with the EU because what he's saying is correct. You should not, the US rather, go after a country that is acting in a legitimate manner as it comes to business. And European policies should be determined by Europeans. But see, this sanctioning is all part of a thing that we like to do where we stick our noses in, other people's affairs. And you should also remember that during Borrell's comment, he mentions that having these sanctions could be considered, some breaking of international law. We've already seen the U.S. break international law before, as the UN has mentioned with the Soleimani assassination we had at the start of this year. So we're not strangers to doing things like that. I will say the one thing I disagree with Borrell on is that you can have an open dialogue when sanctions are being threatened. I think as long as they're not applied, you can speak about, basically to get them to reconsider applying them, to just basically take it off the table. So I think he's trying to say that to exude a level of strength that isn't really necessary for pushing back on us, which again, he's under attack, or rather the EU is coming under attack by us for their own business. And I guess I do get where he's coming from. It's just because sanctions have not been applied, I think it would be in their best interest to interact with us and see if we can actually get something done. But yeah, I agree with the EU. The US needs to leave other people alone and worry about ourselves. And it's laughable that we pretend to, be so concerned about law and order and when domestically when we're breaking it all over the place as it pertains to our relations with other countries.